Welcome to Burn the Ship. This is the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs with professionals that can help you go all in on your business. We talk to people that have walked the walk, talked the talk, been through all the things that we experience as small business owners, and come out the other side willing to share some of those skills and experiences with us. So, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing some time with me, allowing me to learn some stuff. Additionally, I appreciate you connecting with the audience. I think that you have a lot of value to bring to some of the people that are listening. So your time really does mean a lot to me and to the people that are listening. So thank you, first of all. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I love to talk about this stuff. So I'm Andy Herbert, and I am the founder, and I like to call myself the Chief Kindness Officer at Be Kind Lyfe Consulting. So we do coaching and consulting for anyone from mid-size, or excuse me, small businesses to mid-size, large businesses, looking to either kick off and get started, and sort of what does that look like. So not just from, I think sometimes people, and I'm sorry, I'm all over the place a little bit, but I think sometimes people think culture just is HR. And so it's like, oh, they think not until I have an HR team, or that's how I'll manage my culture. But really, we work with people, again, starting out their business, to set up the framework for how their business functions and runs, because that all dictates culture. And then we also help mid-sized businesses that maybe they are ready to look for additional funding. Maybe they're ready to acquire another company. Maybe they are looking to sell their business. And so we help with any level of sort of scaling and preparation for what that like next step can look like for their business.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
I think I think what you said is very, very important, and kind of the catalyst for this conversation today is that my company, we're looking at multiple different things. We're looking at some franchise opportunities through one of the other products that we sell. We're looking to acquire a company that really kind of has it's a little bit outside of what we do on a regular basis, but all of those people are really, really good contacts for us. And just trying to uh, effortlessly pour some of what we do and how we feel and what we think about business and the way that we carry ourselves and the culture that we have absolutely endorsed internally, and trying to permeate that into some of these other organizations, and starting that from square one, not really trying to ease that in later or let things kind of fall into their own rhythm and then make changes. I think is super, super important. So tell me this, like, what does that process look like, and how do you kind of go about auditing where people are now and then putting the steps in place for a more successful future?
Yeah, so for us, it really starts with kind of, what is your vision? What are you trying to do as an organization? Um, and then, is that playing out in your organization? So every organization will have their vision and mission statements, and generally there's something that goes on a wall, or maybe it's in a book somewhere. But it's not often in practice. So we audit to see if those things are actually in practice. Are you, if being financially responsible, are you really being financially responsible? If it's, we want to be the best workplace, in the state, in the country. Okay, well, how is that showing up? Is that actually showing up? We talk to employees, we talk to vendors, um, talk to customers, and really get a sense of, is your vision aligned with what is being shown out into the world? Once we do that, then we're able to kind of look and say, all right, 100%, you guys are good to go. You don't need any help. Like, move yourself forward. But probably more often than not, there's little gaps that are in there, right? Between a lot of times what executives would like to see happening and then what's actually happening. And so we're able to go in and sort of start to analyze what those gaps are, and then work with not just the executive leadership, but your actual functional people doing the work. Work with the whole entire organization to start to figure out how to get those things aligned, right? And so it could be anything from, hey, we don't have a solid problem solving mechanism. Okay, then let's put that into place. Oh, we don't have good process around how we execute work. All right, let's look at putting that into place. That's why I was saying earlier that when we talk about culture, it's not just this kind of HR thing, this like, are we all sitting around doing kumbaya? It's really, how is our organization functioning? Is the things that we're saying we are, is that showing up as actually how how we are? Are those two things actually aligning? So
Sure.
yeah,
No, go ahead. Go ahead if
I was
you've
just
got
going to
more.
say, so ultimately we like to start by just talking to people. So just doing discovery and learning about what the organization is.
Well, I've found when I think of culture, I think I started out from a lot of kind of the the normally what you expect people to think of when they think of culture, right? Of just like, how do we do things? How do we act? How do people feel when they talk to us? And you don't really think about how much deeper that really goes until you try to have your culture reflected in something else, right? In order to have your culture reflected in the experience of your customers or the actions of your employees or just the little things that you do on a day-to-day basis that determine where you are and more importantly, I think where you are not, is something that I never reflected on until, like I said, I had to put that in place into an organization that didn't grow up the same way that I kind of grew up in my space. That we weren't nurtured the same way or grown in the same soil the same way this other organization was, and now we have to figure out how to play together functionally in the same sandbox. But tell me a story. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you got into doing what you're doing now and really the value. Like, where was that aha moment for you that realized, oh, I really have this understanding that I can deliver to other businesses that can make their lives a little easier?
Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to comment on something you said previously. You talked about acquiring a company, or I think you talked about it was purchasing a company, or maybe
Franchising, I think.
franchising. It was franchising. And I think one of the things that you said that was so important that I think a lot of people will miss is the company coming in needs to establish the culture immediately. There
Hmm.
is no like, let's see how this plays out and then we'll think about this. And so this leads me into the story. Having worked in what really is a Fortune 10 company and working on working within this sort of space of mergers and acquisitions, and as this company was going in and acquiring other organizations, it was like, okay, we're just going to let these organizations do what they want. And then we'll slowly like start to think about bringing them into the fold. And it was catastrophic, right? Because now all of a sudden this idea, and part of the, part of those acquisitions was about economies of scale.
Hmm.
Everybody's working their own process. Everyone has their own
Right.
way of doing things. Everyone has their own products that they purchase. Everyone has their own cadence of meetings. Everyone has their own standards of something as simple as how we respond to emails, right? These sort of work agreements that we all have, excuse me. And so it created such catastrophe. That's where I started to realize, oh, this is like a gap. This is the
Hmm.
gap in the market. There's too many organizations. We have tons of mergers and acquisitions going on all over the place, and too many people are coming together and not really thinking through of what culturally you have to kind of change. There's all this stuff with badging over and new insurance and like getting
Right.
new people into the mix, the sort of technical piece. But how are we all actually going to work together? And we don't realize this, but culture ends up costing, I feel like I'm going to mess this number up, but call it roughly 2,500, 3 grand a person um per year, is what poor culture can end up costing you. Now, if you only
Hmm.
got one or two employees, it's not that big of a deal. But once you start to exponentially, calculate that out, that is a lot of money that is wasted really on what comes down to poor sort of strategy on like how we're all going to actually work together. And that's really what culture is, right? It's like how are we all going to work together, and then how does that present itself outwards?
Sure. Yeah, I can agree. But I think that one of the biggest examples of that in my own organization is hiring salespeople. Your assumption is that those salespeople will see what is happening around them and then be able to replicate the day-to-day activities of the people around them. And a lot of times that's true, a lot of times that is not, but you don't want people to replicate the bad things or the easy things or the lazy things. And then you don't want people to miss out on replicating something that you really don't feel like that you don't realize that you need to talk about. when I got into the B2B sales world, I was 20 years old. I didn't know how to replicate the things that I saw people that were doing a good job were doing. I I was hired and I was 20 years old, and there was, two other 1099, like 55 plus old sales reps. Well, one, replicating what they do is not what is going to make me successful. It's just it's just a fact that we need to go about our processes a little bit differently. And so all I was able to do was reflect what was happening around me and not understand and embrace the culture and make that work for me. So that leads me back to all right, so I have an understanding, and this is kind of an assumption, right? Like if I'm working with a company and I'm going in to do what I do, the payment side or whatever, and I see, okay, XYZ things are what they do well, right? They communicate with me well. They get me in touch with the right people. They help me in the process of buying something. They're working with their customers. They're getting issues resolved immediately. My assumption is that they have some proactive and effective culture. And if the opposite is true, then I realize, oh, it's hard for them to get me documents I need, or it's hard for them to pick up the phone, or it's hard for them to grow, or their volume from a credit card processing standpoint stays the same month after month, year after year, right? And then you come in and you're diagnosing, here's kind of what you say you are, here's what's happening out there in the real world, and then here's what we're going to try to implement step by step to make things where you want them to be. What can people expect to be kind of the difficult parts of that journey, right? Because I think that we would be doing people a disservice not talking about the reality of what it looks like to put some of these things into place. I think that maybe there's going to be an assumption that if you spend a while thinking about this, if you're having a drink on your couch at night and you think about this stuff for an hour, you're probably going to be able to whiteboard some stuff in your mind of things that need to change and things that need to not, right? Things that are kind of your superpower. But I think that we would be remiss for not talking about the difficulty of shifting a culture from kind of inside that problem, and really the value that it brings to have someone that can reflect on those things from outside of your organization and try to structure some of that change. So can you talk a little bit about what that process looks like for people that have kind of identified for themselves this is something they need to take a look at?
Definitely. And I will say this, culture change is not an initiative. So it's not going to be this thing that's like, okay, well, here we go and we have it from this time period to this time period, and then okay, like magically it all happens.
Right.
Really what we emphasize, just because change is difficult, it is not an easy thing for people, right? It is massively uncomfortable. So we like to start with small bits, small things that we can do that can have big impact, right?
Right.
So where we try to set people up is not with the idea that, oh, we have to go from this, we have to go from A to Z, and like, let's think about all the things between A and Z. Too overwhelming, too much. So we're just trying to get from A to maybe A.1, right?
Right.
Not even trying to go to B yet. These small incremental changes that we can make that happen over time, they become habitual. It becomes easier when it's small and you can sort of be thinking about it, and then all of a sudden you're not thinking about it and it is just what it is. So I think the best way to answer that question is to not try and bite off culture as this initiative that you can chunk out and you're going to like be able to execute and get it done. It really is this idea that you're going to invest in this thing that, by the way, is going to take constant continuous work. I'm not saying you have to have a consultant with you for the longevity of that, but you are going to always have to be thinking about, what are you doing? How is this working? What do we need to change? You want that as part of, if you really want culture to be something that is meaningful and something that is, again, rooted in your vision, you're going to always have to be thinking about how you're working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an evolution, right? Like it grows into something different all the time. And I think that if you there's probably some good examples that we can take over looking at some stuff over like 50 years,
Mm.
right? Like I think we're approaching 40 years of Microsoft ish,
Mhm.
maybe. And that is a really, really good kind of use case for demonstrating exactly what you just said. Their culture continues to change. Their culture with 5 people and with 50 people and 500 and now some 100,000 employees is completely different. But there has the thing that I think is very unique is that there's some things that are very, very consistent, and then there are some things that absolutely change, right? The culture of innovation and challenging the status quo and building products with the heart of your customer in mind and being okay with disturbing or disrupting an industry and addressing a problem that is different than anyone has dared to address that problem. That's who that company is deep down.
Mhm.
Right? That is maybe the mission statement or how you view your business currently if you are listening. Some of the things that I think continue to change are how do we go about solving a problem? How do we make sure that all of our teams work together? How do we get the most out of the money that we're spending and the human capital that we have at our disposal? I think that those are the reasons that you continue looking at this thing is that your vision today was not going to be the same as your vision in a year, is not going to be your same vision in 10 years and in 40 years. Those things evolve into something else because I think that that's all for the most part. Um, and I know some people that have worked in corporate forever and they've started their own business and they're okay with their business the way that it is, and the culture of that business is about taking care of that small community of people that are invested in their brand, right? For the overwhelming majority, I feel like, of us begin these ventures without a okay, here's where I'm happy line, right? Or here's where I stop, here's where I let myself hang out. That's the reason that this whole evolution of culture is so important, is that without establishing the culture of a growing, innovating, scaling company, it's really, really hard to achieve those things. You have to be doing things that are so brilliant to overcome what culture can set you back from. It really is. It's been eye opening for me, right? Like when we started getting clients in different ways, I really had to think about the way that, the culture and our identity in our space kind of changed. And it was really unique, and trying to demonstrate that to the world is something that I find difficult and overly valuable to reflect upon.
I mean, you can see this. There was a great study that was out maybe 2017 that was looking at Amazon and Google, two wildly successful companies, but two wildly different approaches to culture. And at
Hmm.
the time in 2000, again, 2016, 17, something in there, at that time, there was this question of does culture matter? And at the time, Google doubled down and was like, listen, we care about our people. We're investing in our people. Like, this is part of who we are. Like, this is going to be the thing going forward. And Amazon was like, basically, Amazon was like, we're doing fine. We don't care. It's only, roughly 5 or 6 years later, you can see people are wanting to unionize and people are producing stories about terrible work environments. And that hurts Amazon, right?
Hmm.
So to your point, there has to be an intentionality to your culture, because let me be clear, culture is happening whether it's intentional or not.
Right.
So if you don't put the effort into it, it's just going to manifest as to whatever it is. So you talked about being, sales folks, and you know, are they just seeing what's happening? And a lot of times people might take some of the good stuff, but quite frankly, people might take some of the bad stuff too, right? So if we're not intentional about what we want people to take, what we want people to do, you won't have a guess. You can't guess which way it's going to go. So culture
Absolutely.
is ultra intentional. The way you want it, the way you want it to go. And again, this is about how we work. We do strategic planning sessions all the time, right? To again, get that vision and align what are your objectives? What are the things that we need to be doing? Goal setting. I've worked with so many people who, there'll be an offsite with an executive team, and that executive team sets goals, and then they forget that, well, there's a whole team of people down here who have to connect to these goals. They have to understand what their part of these goals are. And you guys have sat in a room and made them without any question, like feedback, anything from, from these
Right.
folks. So like that is a culture break, right? So we're like, we want feedback. We want the whole, yes, the executive team is sort of the big visionaries, but you want feedback from your entire group. You want to get that information. I always say, and this is a little bit off, but like your frontline folks know more than anyone in your entire organization.
100%.
So having them not be a part of the vision of where your organization is trying to go, having them not be a part of how you're going to, who you want to be represented as in the community, it doesn't make any sense. So we try to look at, again, that's why I said, we work with executive teams, but we're very, very intentional about like, you want to bring these people in. Your whole entire company is your company culture, your
Yes.
whole entire organization. And I would argue, which people might push back on this, but I would argue your vendors are part of that. Your customers are part of that. These are all people who are having conversations about you, not in your inner circle, right? Not
Right.
in the confines of your company. So they are a part of this too. Anyway, it's a full circle and you got to be intentional about it.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can share a story personally. The owners of my company have been in the space for 25 years and I've been in it for 10 years, right? So when they started in my industry and I started in my industry, it's two different playing fields, two very different playing fields. When they started in the payments world was a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of paper statements sitting behind desk, a lot of very impulsive sales, right? Which is, I here's savings. Here's what I can do for. Here's one, two touch closes, tiny bit of follow up, a little bit of installation and training, and they were on to the next thing. And when I started in my industry, that was not the case. There were not paper statements behind desks. It took me 7 to 10 touches to close one deal, right? It was a completely different playing field that I was introduced to in my industry and they were introduced to in my industry. And they were aware of that when they hired me because they were still actively operating in the space, right? And one of the things that I thought was very unique, and my company has a little bit of like a locker room culture, a bunch of old college athletes. Like everyone in my office was an athlete of some form, and so we kept score with deal count,
Mhm.
right? So how many deals did you do this year, and how many deals did the guy beside you do this year, and how many deals did the dude across the hall do for me this year? And I remember, I think I was in my role for 3 or 4, maybe 5 years before I lost a deal count race. Right, the first time that I'd been there ever, where I was like, "Oh, you didn't do the most deals this year," and I was like, "That's fine with me." And then my office was like, "Well, how are we gonna get? We're gonna increase your productivity next year." And I was like, "Whoa, I'm not gonna change anything because I almost quadrupled my income in one year." Right? Like I'm fishing in the right pond. And maybe I'm not catching as many fish as the guy across the way, but they're bigger, they're better, they stay around longer, they make us a lot more money. And so I think a lot of that culture and understanding of your people, like when you're talking about connecting with your vendors, connecting with your customers, connecting with your salespeople or your service people or just anyone inside your organization, is to realize what is important to those people.
Mhm.
Because I'm a firm believer that people that are in roles that are incentivized, commissioned, residual roles where there's a steady growth of income to you based on how well you do your job, those people needed to be reminded of their incentives, and their incentives need to be aligned with what they find valuable, right? And so like that's literally my own personal experience of like, having a conversation of like, oh, you can do better next year, we believe in you. And I'm like, man, I have done things this year that would blow your mind, and about them. You were there with me through all of that. It's not like I have like absentee on, like I see them every single day. Like they're 200 feet from me right now. And so the thing that I found was unique is just like you're not keeping score correctly. You know what I mean? You don't know the score of the game. You know what I mean? Like we're I'm winning. We're winning. All of us are winning because I'm figuring out these things that help us define our culture and who we want to sign up and what is important to us and what is not, and how do we be the best that we can be, because I've always been highly invested, like I said, college athlete. I've always been highly invested in the success of the people around me as well. Team player, trying to bring as much value to those people as I can. That's just who I am deep down. And honestly, as I reflect on that, I feel like a lot of that culture has been reflected on a lot of the people that we've hired, because we really have a really, really good team. So I am, I'm kind of cementing and backing up a lot of the assumptions that, or kind of data backed assumptions that we've made, that you would kind of have to apply to each individual as you're problem solving for those people. But I promise you that this stuff matters. I've been very fortunate to, I kind of got into my industry and my company when we were kind of in our infancy of like hiring people and growing and all of those things. And so this thing came, the culture side came very naturally to us. But now, like I said, is, we're trying to open up offices all over the United States with people that are not invested in our culture. Not that it may not permeate, but they're not invested. They're going to do things the way that they want to. They're going to move at the speed that they want to move in, and we have to find this area in between of, how do we give some of those people our fire and still kind of meet them where they're at, and go through this whole metamorphosis together. So I think what you do is really, really cool. I would love, especially when you're back in my area, for you to come meet my team. I would love for you to talk to those people, because I definitely think that healthier businesses make more valuable clients for us, and they stay longer and they give us some grace to do our job and all of those things. So I think you coming and talking to my team could lead to some opportunities that are really good for both of us when it takes a kind of a look at auditing some of these things. So
Okay.
when you're back near Atlanta, I would love to meet you face to face, and I want to ask you, if for the people that are listening, if they want to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
Yeah, you can find us at www.bekindlife with a y, bekindlife.com. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. Come follow, come connect on LinkedIn. Would love it. My LinkedIn is at Andrea Herbert, AndreaHerbert. So come connect. And yeah, I would love to come out. I think that everything that you are saying is so spot on with how businesses stay not just successful, but have sustained success. And that, I think, is the part that people sometimes don't quite get, right? You want this longevity. And I think what all the things you're talking about are just spot on for that.
Well, thank you. I think that I speak this way about these things because I want it for other people too. I think maybe I have some not like pity, or not like feel bad, but just I think that some of the situations, some of the people that are entering the workforce in my generation and kind of the generation below me, kind of get the short end of the stick when it comes to trying to understand what you can do and what you cannot do. Like when people tell me like, "Oh, I've had 10 jobs in 2 years." I go, "Man, you like, oh, it's not like you have a terrible relationship with your alarm clock." Like, especially when I know those people personally, it's just like, "Man, you just really haven't felt that thing that I felt so early." So early, I connected with my company in a way that I know I will never connect with another professional organization, right? Like, I knew I belonged here. And really, what I want is just other people to feel that. I think that that's so gratifying. I think that delivers so much value to your mental health and your day to day life, to be able to be putting some passion and some energy into some stuff that you believe in. And I think a lot of people miss the mark on that unintentionally, because they don't know any better, or they think that people um, intake information or apply processes the same way that you do, and maybe that's just not always the case. So really, I come into this conversation to you guys that are listening, wishing the best for you and wishing the best for the people that you're going to hire, because it's the only way for all of us to be productive. It's the only way for all of us to be successful, is to find somewhere where we feel like a valuable piece of the machine. I think that it matters so much, and it's done so much for me in my life and my family, and being able to provide for all these people. Like if I wasn't motivated by a lot of those things, I would be stuck in the exact same place that I was, after retiring from sports. You know what I mean? So like it's been a unique thing, but I appreciate your time. I think that what you're talking about is very valuable, and I look forward to connecting some of the dots of people in my space and in my organization with you, because I think what you do is a beautiful representation to really what business is about. And I look forward to connecting with you further. So if you have anything else to leave the people with, I would love for you to close us out. But for me, that has been Burn the Ship, and I think that this has been a really good episode for people trying to figure out what makes their business tick.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've said it all so eloquently. I don't even want to mess it up. So I'm going to leave the audience with that as well. Just remember, your people want to connect the dots. They want to be connected to the business. If the people are connected, your business is going to thrive and you're going to have success.
Absolutely. All right, thank you guys. Until next time, burn the ship.